I think there might be a little surprise in this one for some people, because I don't know how many of you are aware that Martin Luther King spent the summer of 1944, I believe he was 15 years old, working in the tobacco fields in Simsbury. And I know, nobody knows this, and apparently it was an incredibly epiphanous experience. And so when I found that out, this is what I wrote. When Martin first knew. An abandoned tobacco barn sits fading gray in a leftover field, surrounded by suburbs, where once migrant workers hung giant green leaves from the rafters to dry in fresh air and sunshine when the walls were folded open. Now dried out, lichen-covered asphalt shingles sit akimbo, slipping from the roof. Hundreds of hinges are rusted frozen, and the walls are sealed shut. But inside, there's a ghostly chatter in the whispered dialects of Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama. The worn-out, long-ago voices of those who, in the stifling heat, wearing bandanas and dripping with sweat, were transported back and forth between fields, barns, and bare-bones housing in battered yellow school buses. And though paid a meager wage, finally got to drink from the same water fountain as white folks. And now, though they're fading away, their memory's been folded into a future altered by the one who, upon his first taste of fairness, opened his eyes wide and dreamed of more. And this is the poem that I just wrote, and I have a recommendation for everybody. If you haven't been to the Wadsworth Atheneum since they've redone the galleries, head on over. And they also have a great exhibit on Coney Island. But they have a picture display that I'd never seen before. It's a photograph, and it's 4 separate square frames. And it's really one image, but it's in 4 separate frames. And so this poem was inspired by that, but also by the Rodin sculpture, The Thinker. This handsome young man, his softly glowing skin radiating the winter warmth of cocoa, is heavy in thought as he holds his head with the palms of his hands and fingers splayed across his cheeks. He's deep in confusion. A split image of himself in 4 perfectly square, broken pieces, pushed together as if to pretend the edges are not there. But divisions exist between the tightly twisted, yet wild, short orange-tinged dreadlocks, khaki pants, and preppy checked shirt, in bisque and brown. The fullness of his emerging being squeezed into slivers of invisible white between the dark mahogany frames. As I've already mentioned, I like to bring current events into my readings. A year ago, my husband and I took a trip to Turkey and had a very pleasant discovery that it's amazing that there were women walking around with total head-to-toe coverage, and next to them was either a daughter or a sister wearing a mini skirt and cleavage. So it was, and they didn't seem to think anything of it. They welcomed Americans. It was a really wonderful experience. But it also then got me to thinking about the other parts of the Middle East where it's not that way, and hopeful that maybe Turkey can stay the way it is. And this poem is really a conglomeration of everything. Things I saw on that trip, things I've read in the paper. And does anybody not know what a hijab is? It's the scarf that women wear, Muslim women wear. And that's the only word, I think, in here. The poem is entitled Hope. Somewhere in the war-torn Middle East, I don't even look back to catch my hijab when it slips to the ground. Breathless, I run, with bones still rattling, ears still ringing from the blast, with no sense of where to find safety. Till slowing down, I wend my way past half-empty shops and vegetable stalls in the cobblestone back alley maze of the market, once vibrant with life. I head towards the hidden mosque deep in my memories. Feeling privy to a secret, I remove my shoes, reach for a scarf, cover my head, enter this small, sacred space filled with silence. I softly step onto rose and teal-colored carpet, surrounded by walls covered in tiles of vivid turquoise and cobalt blue. Before I kneel, bow my head down reverently, place my hands on the floor. My eyes are drawn up towards the dome, with its pointed arches, windows to another world, in patterns of glowing precious round stones, cut from glass, ruby, azure, emerald, amber, glittering as I move, beneath a brilliant abundance of blessings from above. The next few poems are going to be related to art. As I mentioned before, I had this passionate love of the visual arts. And I was very deeply moved by the movie The Monuments Men. I don't know how many of you have seen that. It didn't get great reviews, but for me, I gave it 5 stars. So it was about the artwork that was hidden away, stolen, what have you, during World War II, and about this group of people that were part of the government, the United States government, I guess, and they were searching for this artwork. Unfortunately, there's one amazing painting that's never been found. And it's the painting Painter on His Way to Work by Vincent van Gogh. And the title of this poem is Blank Canvas. In his baggy blue-gray work clothes and broad-brimmed yellow hat, this artist, with canvas and tools on his shoulders and under his arm, and a prescient black shadow at his feet, was surrounded by fields of deep chartreuse and gold, a soft pale green aqua sky, and trees of rusty brown, on his way to work in Tarascon, walking on a sunlit cobblestone path when he took a sudden wartime detour, and nobody knows for sure where he went. If he waited out the war hidden in a cave, salt mine, flak tower, or castle, or crumbled in flames during Allied bombings, was torched along with other artists at the Kaiser Friedrich Museum by retaliating Nazis in retreat, or was captured by the Russians and secretly sold, and now sits behind a velvet curtain, only to be seen in private viewings. All we have left is a ghost in a color photo image, absent the swirling, thick signature texture of his brushstrokes. But for me, he still lives on the walls of museums, in the vase of sunflowers, swirling 3-dimensional layers of russet, persimmon, dark green, and gold autumn tones. Or the blue off-kilter bedroom in Arles, with its hanging towel and tilted portraits, that perhaps that day he was on his way to paint. The next poem is a bit funky. Be prepared. I don't know how many of you, I'm full of all these surprises today, but how many of you were aware that Degas was a celibate? Okay, I had no knowledge of this until last year, and so it got my imagination on fire. And he could have been gay. I mean, we don't know anymore. But I decided that he wasn't. So this is what I wrote. Degas' Desire. And it's inspired by the Degas painting Woman with a Towel at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This woman is flaunting her voluptuous body from behind as she drapes a plush towel across her lower back and derriere, exposing the freshly washed pink of her flesh. She twists her torso just enough to show her ample belly and a breast, while tilting her head of long auburn hair to cover most of her face. And you know that she's willing, that he's longing for her to turn around and drop that towel. But with heart pounding and droplets of sweat on his brow, he stops himself from reaching out, and instead turns away, reaches for his palette and brush, and pours his stifled passion into painting. And this next poem was written for a word art show at the Canton Library, actually. And I worked with the artist Diane Kennedy, and we had a very interesting, I don't know if you want to call it psychic or whatever experience, but she came up with the idea, the topic for the show was words, anything related to words. And I don't know, I just didn't feel very inspired, and I guess she didn't either. So she decided to do it about symbolic words. And she chose the Lascaux paintings, the cave paintings in France, as her inspiration, which then I had to respond to. And I never saw what she had done. And I took a look at her painting, and it was exactly what I had written. It was really an interesting experience. So this is called A Secret. Hidden in the deep, narrow, darkest parts of caves, still lost, though found, stenciled handprint signatures and silent painted thoughts in a language of pictures, some detailed, others scratched and scrawled. Simple stick figures and inscrutable symbols in circles, dots, arrows, spirals, squiggles, straight lines. In blood red, umber, black, rust, gold. On rough walls of stone whose dips and swells add dimension to carefully outlined horses, bison, ibex, reindeer, bear, mammoth, and fish, once lit by the flickering light of torches, awkwardly held by the artisans who long ago crawled through the dripping dankness of tunnels on a mission that their ghosts are now the only ones who know.